Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Chris Abbott, but all my friends just call me Abbo. And I was in youth ministry for 15 years. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how to invite youth to church. And I'm going to walk you through some of the do's and don'ts, as well as some of the best practices that I learned that's going to help you get a bunch more teenagers in your church coming up. Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. If we're meeting for the first time, what's up? All my friends just call me Abbo. And what we're going to be doing is I'm going to break down a couple of strategies that you can use in order to be able to invite more youth out to your youth group and get them into your Sunday morning services as well. And I'll even be sharing some of the growth secrets from a youth group that went from 0 to 700 in only 3 years. So let's dive in. So I'm super passionate about helping reach the next generation, and specifically youth ministry. I was in youth ministry for 15 years, and for a large chunk of my life, I dedicated my life simply to helping teenagers live for Jesus. One of the most important things that I learned in youth ministry that they never tell you in seminary or Bible school is that youth kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So what I found is that 80% of youth ministry was simply showing up. Right? So many teenagers out there have so many different types of inconsistencies in their lives with their relationship. Some of them have inconsistencies with their parents, or their friends come and go, or their girlfriends or boyfriends break up with them. And so when you're a teenager, you have so many things that are unsteady. But if you, as the youth leader or youth pastor, can be a steady and a constant in their life, that is going to be huge. And 80% of youth ministry is simply showing up. Just be that steady constant in their life every single week, and you are going to have a really strong youth ministry career. All right, so when we talk about just showing up, what does that mean? Does that mean just showing up at church every single week? Well, no, you got to actually show up where teenagers are. You have to take an interest in them. One of the things that we found that was so effective in growing our youth group is that as youth leaders, we would show up to football games, we would show up to cheerleading competitions, right? Baseball tournaments, we would show up to school plays, anything that our youth kids were interested in and they were doing, we would show up, and we would show up in force. I remember we had a kid who was a junior in high school, right? He was 16 years old, hadn't even turned 17 yet, and he had a new girlfriend. She wasn't living for Jesus, right? But he really wanted to get her saved. He wanted to bring her to church, but because of past experience when she was growing up, she was totally against church, and there was no way she was ever going to show up. So what we decided to do is we decided to ambush her at her improv night. Right? So she was an actress, she was really into acting, and she would have these improv shows every Tuesday night, and there'd be like 10 people that showed up. So we actually not only got all of our youth leaders, but then a bunch of other people from the church, and we brought like 25 or 30 people to her improv night. And she was blown away. Every time she did anything on stage, we just went nuts and went absolutely crazy. Here are all these high school kids that are used to 8 or 10 people showing up, and now there's 40, and 75% of the crowd is roaring and excited about her. And afterwards, right, we just high-fived her, we just kind of loved on her, and we were just there for her. You know what happened is that Wednesday she was in church. She couldn't believe, she was actually in tears with the fact that we would come out even though we didn't know her, we didn't know anything about her, and not only would we show up just a couple of us, we brought a huge crowd for just her. Right? It was because 80% of youth ministry is just showing up, right? And when you do that and you actually demonstrate how much you care, and kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So this day and age, one of the things that you have to do at this point is you have to show up where teenagers are. So the biggest platforms for teenagers right now is going to be Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok. Right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're showing up where they already are. So there's a quote that says, if you want to change an industry, you have to change the content they consume. And the exact same thing goes for teenagers, right? If you want to change their culture, if you want to change your city, you have to change the content they consume. So if they're on TikTok watching funny videos and laughing, or maybe they're watching tutorials, and then all of a sudden there's like a 60-second mini Devo from you as the youth pastor, now you're changing the content that they consume, and you're showing up in a place where they're probably spending hours every single day. So Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok are 3 of the best ways to be able to be on social media and changing the content that your teenagers consume. All right, so we've talked about some of the do's of youth ministry, right? Let's talk about some of the don'ts. All right, so one of the things you don't want to do in youth ministry is you don't want to put a ton of pressure on your kids to invite their friends, right? A lot of times kids are having a great time, they're coming out, and they might feel really comfortable with you, but they might be a little bit nervous about inviting their friends to church. And that's not a reflection of you or a reflection of your youth group. It's just a reflection of their status. They're afraid that if they invite some of their friends, they won't look cool, right? That someone might think that they're a dork or a nerd because they're going to church, right? And so the best way to do this, instead of pressuring them to invite, is give them something cool to invite 2. So if you have a really sticky sermon series that answers some of the big questions that teenagers have, they will automatically invite their friends because it makes them look cool. So for example, one of the sermon series that I used to do every single year is in the fall, right at back to school, we would always do a sermon series called Brainwashed. Does God really exist, or are we all just brainwashed? This was a sticky sermon series that made it super easy for kids to invite their friends, right? Because we would say, hey, have you ever wondered why bad things happen to good people? Come on out to our new series, Brainwashed. Does God really exist, or are we all just brainwashed? And so what was interesting is I would have tons of teenagers who would show up who were atheists or agnostics, or they were struggling with their faith because most of them didn't know that there were answers to some of life's biggest questions. So we would use this sermon series to talk about why do bad things happen to good people? How can a loving God send people to hell, right? If God is so good, why is there so much evil in the world? Has science disproven Christianity? When you start to tackle some of those big questions and you actually promote them, then tons of kids will show up and they'll invite their friends. Because again, it gives them increased status and it makes them look cool because now they're actually promising to answer questions that their friends have. So a great sticky sermon series is a great way to get your kids to invite people. So don't pressure them, just put out cool content like that and they'll automatically invite their friends. Another great way to doing this is to have a big night once a month. So when I first became a full-time youth pastor, I did this. We were running about 65 kids and I came in and all I did is I started showing up where they were at. So I would go to school lunches once a week and I'd literally just hand out burritos or burgers or McChickens or something like that, just to every kid, right? I would just wear my 708 Faith Church t-shirt and I wouldn't just show up and only hang out with my youth kids, right? I would just simply go out there and start tossing out burritos and say, hey guys, we're having church tonight at 7 o'clock. I'd love to see you there. Right? And it's surprising how effective that was. You give a bunch of teenagers some free food and they're up for anything. I just started showing up where they're at. I showed up to football practice. I showed up to their basketball games. I showed up to the school plays. I handed out free food once a week at school lunches. Anything that the school would let me do, I made sure to show up and just support my kids. And then once a month, we would have a big night where we would have a bunch of free food, some type of cool event, and a sticky sermon. So we would always do our big night on the last Wednesday night of the month, and we would just do a fun event. Like we might say, hey, we're having a giant bonfire next Wednesday night and we're going to have a bunch of free marshmallows and free s'mores for everybody. And we would answer the question, is it okay to have sex before marriage? Right? And then all I would do is I'd print up some invite cards and I would hand them out to all of our teenagers and just say, hey, if you have some friends who love bonfires, s'mores, and are curious about whether or not they can have sex with their girlfriend, invite them out next week on Wednesday night, right? And so naturally we would have these big, huge nights and we would gain momentum. And so this also allowed us to not have to pressure our kids every single week to invite their friends. We gave them something naturally sticky to invite their friends to, and we pushed all of it to one Wednesday night a month. In doing that, we actually went from 65 kids to 130 in only 3 months. All right, so before I get to my last couple of points, I want to hear from you, right? Like if you're in youth ministry, I want to hear your stories. What are some crazy things that have happened? What are some things that have worked? What hasn't worked, right? And what are some of the things that you're currently struggling with? I promise to read every single comment and I'll answer any questions you might have about youth ministry. All right, so we've been talking about some of the strategies that you can use, right? And I talked about how we would have big nights every single Wednesday night. Well, I actually learned that strategy from my brother-in-law, Chano. He and I volunteered in our youth ministry for several years, and then he was actually tasked with launching a middle school ministry. Up until that point, our youth group had kids ages 7th through 12th grade, but as it began to grow, we decided to separate the high school ministry and then launch a brand new middle school ministry. And if any of you guys have ever done middle school ministry, it's a lot tougher than high school ministry, especially when you're trying to recruit new volunteers, right? So he actually had to start from zero. And the cool thing is, what he did is he started by building a leadership team. He would simply invite prospective leaders to come out on Friday nights up to the youth building. And he would get free pizza and a bunch of free sodas, and they'd play dodgeball, or they'd play basketball, or they'd just hang out and talk, right? But he knew that in order to build a big youth group, he had to build a solid leadership team first. So he actually built the foundation of leadership, and then he started going after the kids. And he did exactly what we were talking about here with the big nights. Once a month, he would have a huge big night. Maybe he would do a glow party where they would replace all the lights with black lights and encourage everyone to bring glow sticks and to wear black light reflective clothing, and the entire service would be under the black light, right? Which kids absolutely love, especially middle school kids. And he would just do cool, fun events like that every single month, once a month, and he would encourage kids to invite their friends to the big night. And so doing this strategy by going all in on the leadership first and then going after the kids, and using the strategy of having a big night once a month, and obviously showing up to football games and school lunches and the places that those kids were. He actually built a middle school ministry from 0 to 700 kids in only 3 years. Now, I'm telling you, I know that sounds crazy, but I was a part of it. Like, I actually led worship there, and it was insane. So we'd get up on Wednesday night, and we'd be leading worship, and you would just see this ocean of kids just bouncing and jumping up and down during worship, right? It was a fun time. In fact, half the time we would get done with worship, and the kids would start chanting, one more song, right? And so I'd look over at my brother-in-law, Chano, and be like, let's go. Boom, and we'd do one more song, and the kids would go nuts, right? It was a really, really fun time to be in youth ministry. And the crazy part is pickup would take almost an hour, right? Because you imagine 700 kids need 700 rides to get back home. So, having a long line of pickup, we had to develop a system for that, which was really, really cool. But it's because we just had so many middle school kids who wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And again, we weren't pressuring our kids to invite their friends. We gave them something sticky and something fun that made them look cool, right? You go invite your friends to a glow party and they show up and there's black lights everywhere and people are handing out glow sticks and worship is bumping and people are jumping, right? And then you're listening to a cool, relevant youth pastor share a word about your life. Man, that makes the guy who invited you look really, really cool, right? So by doing those things and having those attractive events and those sticky sermon series, you can attract a lot of youth kids. And once you get them there, all you have to do is continue to show up in their lives, right? Because they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. All right, so if you like this video and you want to learn a little bit more about how to use social media in order to attract new youth kids and maybe even new visitors to your Sunday morning services, then check out our other video, The Ultimate Guide to Social Media. We'll see you soon.